Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you for joining us for the Australian Book Lovers podcast. This is episode 127. Our mission is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature that spans a whole range of genres to book lovers around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I'm Laurie Bell, science fiction and fantasy author, 100-word flash fiction writer, reviewer, blogger, a bit of everything, and your co-host today, coming to you from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country.
Fantastic. Thanks, Laurie. And I am Veronica Strachan, aka V.E. Patton, a fantasy science fiction picture book and memoir writer. Yeah, absolutely. A podcast reader of many, many, many books, and listener. I have to say, reader and listener. Do we disqualify one or the other?
Oh, absolutely not. No, all reading is reading. Yep.
All reading is reading. Excellent.
All reading is reading,
of many books,
including
audio, coming to you this evening. It's a beautiful spring evening in Woiwurrung country. Although yesterday, of course, it went down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up.
It's been classic.
Yes.
Classic early summer weather. It's almost summer.
And you have a fantastic chat with
Amanda Bridgeman, who is a science fiction writer over in Perth. So a good 3 hours behind us over here in Vic. But it was absolutely fabulous talking to Amanda. I've been itching to talk to her for a while. I'm such a fan. So hopefully I was not too fangirly through the whole interview, because I was suppressing a great deal.
But I can't believe that I haven't read any of her books. And so I've now added those all to my Christmas wish list.
Oh, fantastic.
And told the children any of those.
That's absolutely brilliant.
Of course, the start of the series preferred. Don't buy me book 2 or 3. Thank you.
Yep.
That will be fine. I have, locked myself down to get them from the library. I'm looking for them on audiobook. It's like, really? This is this Australian voice that is so fantastic. Yeah. So anyway, wait for that, peeps. But before that, we have to have some news.
We do.
Have got the fabulous, let me just get the fabulous Kelly Gardner.
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to get it up in front of me. So Kelly Gardner, who is one of the leading lights in Australian literature, is doing a Transform Your Writing retreat in March 2025. And it just looks absolutely fantastic. So 4 writers masterclasses on different topics such as voice and character, writing exercises, some shared and solo time. And another thing that I love about it is that it's up my way in the beautiful Hepburn Springs area, which is just gorgeous this time of year. It is just wonderful. So jump onto Kelly's website, which is New Page Writing Retreats and Masterclasses. So if you go newpagewriting.com, and then you could go, /2020, look at all the bits and pieces. And the writing retreat is in March 2025. So if you haven't booked in and you've got a spare little bit of dosh, or your family want to get you something for Christmas, that's it. And you only have to pay a deposit to secure your room. So I'm really tempted. But anyway,
Oh, you
we'll
should do
see how
it.
we
You
go.
should do it. I was so
You should
close,
totally do
so close,
so
and then got
close.
told I have to keep certain weekends free in March. So,
So that shall be it. But anyway, beautiful.
yes,
So you can get onto her
yes, yeah.
website. Now, the other writing retreat was in my
Mm.
local paper. So here's a
Oh,
shout out to people in the Macedon Ranges again.
mm.
Following the hugely successful inaugural Newstead Young Writers Festival,
Mm.
the Newstead writers are inviting young people, 15 to 18, to be a part of an exciting series of workshops with award-winning local writer Kate Kennedy. So Kate's work's been published in the New Yorker, shortlisted for the Australian Literary Gold Medal, and The World Beneath was awarded the People's Choice Prize at the New South Wales Premier's Literary Awards. So her work includes poetry, short stories, and novels. And her 2 short story collections have been texted on the VCE syllabus for some years, which is good. She's in demand as a fiction writing teacher and mentor. So there you go. So to contact, so Kate's going to host 2 workshops at the Newstead Arts Hub and the Red Shed over December. January school holidays. So if you've got
Gonna
kids
say
who are
that sounds like
loving
school holiday
writing,
time.
and it's,
Yeah.
there, so you've got 2 workshops, you've got a Zoom checkup in the middle.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so you do an expression of interest online and the dates at affordable prices. It's about $80 for the holiday writing program. So if you've got
Very
someone who's
affordable.
keen
Yeah.
to get some mentoring from Kate, sounds like fantastic. So there's going to be
Yeah.
10 plus participants. Let your friends know there may be potential for scholarships.
Ooh.
So you contact Lenny Shilton at Lenny, Leni .Shilton, Shilton, at me.com. I won't get the phone number out over the potty, but there you go. You can do that and have a look and send your aspiring young writer off to there. So
Mm.
lots of writing retreats happening up here.
That's fantastic. Well, it's a retreat location. It's perfect.
It is, it is. Now I've got one more to share with
Mm.
you. So Melissa Lukashenko, who I love her writing, it's absolutely
Yes.
fantastic. She's
Oh, how
won
nice.
the author of sweeping historical novel Eden Glassy, and it's won lots of awards, and she's got another award. She has won. Because
Mm.
Eden Glassy, the penal colony that became Brisbane is Eden
Mhm.
Glassy. So there you go. So she's won
Yeah.
another award for that, which is fantastic. But being a First Nations woman, she gives away a lot of her prize money to her family and to her mob, and it's just brilliant. So yeah, so
Mhm.
she won the Miles Franklin. She's now won the Nib Prize. Yeah, so it was beautiful. So I read that in The Guardian. So she won some money there,
Yes.
and she said that's part of being First Nations, that she gives a lot of her money away.
Yeah.
But I love her writing, and it
Mhm.
reminded me of with the interview that you're doing with Amanda Bridgeman,
Mm.
that the language, the voice that people have, how different voices are, and I love really
Yeah.
complex stuff, but I also love people where the story is simple and clear and human. And Melissa
Mm.
Lukashenko's work is just so terribly human. So
Yes.
that is my
Beautiful.
news. What do you got for
Oh,
us?
well, I had an interesting one. So these are 2 stories that have popped up online in this last week. So listeners may or may not have heard a little bit about them, but there's there's been an announcement by a startup technology company called Spines this year,
Mm.
and they have decided that they're a hybrid publisher, but they've now decided that they're going to use AI to proofread, purchase, publish, and distribute books. And they've
Oh,
said they plan to publish 8,000 novels next year.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so this will be an interesting one to see what happens with it and where they go with it.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's been over 320 startups in the last 2 years that are nearly all AI related. So it's an interesting little heads up for people if really don't reach out to Spines. They're using AI on everything. So
Mm,
I can't see that this is going to end well, honestly.
mm.
But it's been all over online. It's been all over social media. So I'm sure someone will have seen bits and pieces of stories. I've picked that up from the booksandpublishing.com.au website. So that one is Yeah, honestly, I can't think of anything worse, but to be dropping 8,000 books in 1 year, that is going to swamp the market and it's
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
interesting to see what happens.
And what the quality
Mm,
of the books, the publishing,
yeah.
and all of
And the
those
book
things,
covers, they're doing
editing.
it all by AI and they're taking money for it. And you know what?
Mm,
If you're a indie writer or a self-publishing writer, it is cheaper to do it yourself
oh
rather
yeah,
than go to a hybrid publisher like that to
yeah,
getting AI to do everything for you because
yeah.
it's, you can get some great connections with self-publishing and there are some brilliant editors out there that you can
Mm,
pay that will actually look at it properly.
yeah, and give you great insight into how to make your
Amazing
story
feedback.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. It's you're not going to get that with AI.
no,
So
no, no, no.
anyway, and so the other bit of news that I saw that is kind of along those lines, it's another interesting one that's popped up in social media. So ByteDance, which is TikTok's parent company, have announced that they're going to start selling print books in bookshops from early 2025
Wow.
under its publishing imprint Eighth Note Press, I think it's called. So that's another interesting one too. So here are two publishers that you definitely say are very young, um, with their with their dreams of publishing, and it'll be interesting to see, particularly with ByteDance because the obviously Book Talk is huge and
Yes.
mind you, they're only doing an initial offering of 6 titles across genre, including romance, romantasy, contemporary fiction, and YA. So they're obviously pitching at millennials and Gen Z readers, which would be they'd be getting their audience via TikTok anyway. So it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to
Yeah.
see how they go with being in bricks and mortar retailers.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Yes.
But anyway, so I found those that was
Just two
again,
little quirky pieces of news to share.
yeah, all
Yeah.
over social media. So I thought I'll pick up one of those. And I do want to just quickly mention the Australia Reads have a report that they've done doing the reading rates in Australia and how they compare to the rest of the world. Did you see that one?
No,
So the report found that 80% of Australians have read a book in the last 12 months, which is
that's
great,
good.
and 64% of Australians bought a book in the last year. However, though those figures may sound high, they sit slightly below the average of 85% and 72% across 19 surveyed countries. So they do represent a downward trend, particularly amongst younger age groups.
Mm.
So it's interesting stats there where you think those are still 80%. That's great, fantastic.
Mm.
But
Mm.
in the long run, it does seem that there's that it is declining. So it will be interesting to see sort of how those stats are pushed with book sales and with anything to do with books, really. I guess
Mm.
it's definitely it seems to be that they're purchasing across genre in all sales channels. Their ebooks are just as popular as print books, even though paper
Mhm.
books are slightly ahead.
Mhm.
And audiobooks are very popular among Australians as well. So
Mm.
yeah, and readers are open to buying secondhand books as 39% have bought books that are secondhand.
Oh yeah.
So that's still pretty good too. We love a good secondhand books.
Yeah.
Books
Yeah.
books are made to be read.
They are.
Yeah.
And reread and reread and reread and then you give them away and then you think, oh, actually, I'll just collect
Yeah.
those books
And
again.
and so and I end up getting another copy
Yeah,
because
that's
I want a
right.
copy if
That's
I'm
it.
giving my copy to someone to read.
Exactly. Yes.
What
And I have a few favorites that I've given away to lots of different people. And then I go, oh, well, I need a book. I need that
Yep.
back again. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. I even had my niece ask for Christmas for books, which floored me because she's in a band, she's a drummer, she's, cool. She's cool. And yes, but she's asked for books, which of course I'm sitting there going, okay, yep, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need?
Gotcha. Got you covered. Got you covered. Definitely. Go onto the Australian Book Lovers website,
Yes. Oh, yes, there's so many.
www.australianbooklovers.com, and have a look. We
Yep.
have books of all genres, hundreds and hundreds of fantastic books, more coming
Yes.
every day. And
Speaking
so,
of,
speaking of, we
yeah.
better go book spotlights. book spotlights. We have another fabulous quartet of
Yes.
brilliant books. The first one is Broome Enigma by Meryl Brown Tobin, and it's a romance. It's a multi-layered love story set in Broome in outback Australia in the 1980s. On a working holiday in Australia's cosmopolitan outback town of Broome in 1986, Jodie, a young book designer and artist, is open to romance and adventure. At the holiday village where she's staying, she meets Joe, a young man who works there. Despite the strong attraction between them, the many unknowns about his earlier life keep them apart. To try to uncover his mysterious past, they travel to Perth and back to Broome and are drawn into not only bizarre but also dangerous situations. Is Joe the person she thinks he is, or is he some alter ego? Can Jodie and Joe stop their relationship from developing until they have answers and know if he is free to love her? Apart from their own personal problems with coming to terms with a strong attraction, which might lead nowhere, Jodie and Joe come up against serious situations involving dangerous adversaries.
Ooh.
There you go.
86. I remember 86.
Yeah. I was having a good time then. Yes,
Okay,
indeed.
so let me tell you a little bit about Meryl Tobin. So, writing name Meryl Brown Tobin, sorry, is an Australian writer of short and long fiction for adults and children, non-fiction, especially on travel and the environment, poetry, and educational puzzles. She's had 22 books published. How cool. These include puzzle activity books, Blackline Masters books of educational puzzles, workbooks for primary students, a travel book, a children's picture storybook, a poetry collection, and a haiku collection with 4 other poets of the Society of Women Writers Victoria. She has also edited 1 book and co-edited 2 others. In total, nearly 300,000 copies of her first 4 puzzle books, which were published by Ashton's Glassgeek, were sold in Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. Hundreds of her poems, puzzles, short stories, and travel and other articles, and some cartoons and comic strips have appeared in more than 150 magazines, newspapers, and anthologies in Australia and overseas, including India, Japan, Singapore, and Malaysia, New Zealand, the Philippines, the United Kingdom, and the USA. Some of her stories and poems have been broadcast by the Australian Broadcasting Commission and other radio stations, while others have been published on the internet. As a guest on the set of Channel 7's children's program, The Book Place, she read her story Lefty with regular presenter Lynn Weston. Wow, what a career of writing.
That
Puzzle
is a
books.
significant author bio.
Mm,
Fantastic. Yeah, congratulations. That is wonderful,
Brilliant.
Meryl, beg your pardon. And yeah, the Society of Women's Writers Victoria is a good group who meet and support each other in their writing, so that they're a good lot of writers to follow as well. Okay,
Fantastic.
number 2. Completely different. We've got Scruffy
Yes.
and Silk by Karen Kepert and Kaz Clarke, which is a picture book. It's a story about individual differences based on the different personalities of a dog and a cat who live under the same owner, Mr. Prim. Mr. Prim is always telling Scruffy off and telling Silk how special she is. Scruffy gets sadder and sadder until he can't sleep at night. When a thief breaks into the house, Scruffy creeps up, trips over the thief, and keeps guard while Mr. Prim calls the police. When the police officer comments on Scruffy's bravery, Mr. Prim finally realises that Scruffy is just as good as Silk and tells them they're both wonderful in their own different ways.
Aww,
Yeah.
that's adorable.
And the illustrations are absolutely lovely. So that's Kaz Clarke's illustrations, just
Oh,
gorgy. Yeah.
Fantastic. So Karen Kepert is the author, so has written many songs and is now writing children's picture books. She's a retired literacy and numeracy teacher and school chaplain. She has worked with students from very disadvantaged backgrounds in TAFE secondary and primary schools. Karen currently travels around schools, combining the reading of Scruffy and Silk with her own songs and actions, special class follow-up activities, and answering students' questions about life as an author. That
There
sounds
you go.
so much fun.
It does look like a sweetie. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I was
All
just thinking
right.
about my terror cats this morning. So we'll move on, but they definitely don't sound like Scruffy.
No. No, but they sound more like they might be Silk. The spoiled
Perhaps.
brats, no?
Yeah.
Perhaps Silk.
Well, they were a bit, one was a bit bitey today. She
Ah,
was a bit nippy. So
right. So she's in the bad books. Fair
yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3, My Name is Gucci by Sun Jung. This is a contemporary stories, and this was one of the books that we gave away in the last newsletter. And it was given to a fabulous fan down in, I'll just say in Southwest Victoria, and he knows who he is, and he was absolutely delighted to read it. Loved the book, told 2 friends about it, and he's going to write a review. So
Oh,
thank you so
marvelous.
much for that, and had sent me a beautiful photo of his dog as the entry for winning the book. So
Very cool.
absolutely fantastic. If you want to get into that free book giveaways, you need to subscribe to our newsletter. So jump on the website on the page that says Book Lovers and get your name in there.
Yes.
Okay, here is My Name is Gucci. After living in a Singapore dog shelter for 5 years, Gucci, a vaguely Dalmatian-like crossbred, is losing hope of ever being rescued. One day, to his surprise, he's adopted by her, a writer, and moves to inner city Sydney. On arrival, however, an anti-dog war breaks out in their apartment block. Gucci's adopter receives a letter threatening the possibility of euthanasia. The incident triggers nightmares in her and brings back distressing childhood memories. My Name is Gucci is a charming novel about the relationship between pets and their owners and about how the past shapes the present. This bold ex-shelter dog narrated fable beautifully unravels Gucci's and his adopter guardian's secrets, which have been intertwined for decades through their recurring reincarnations. Sun Jung understands the deep connections that exist between animals and their human companions. You won't need to be a dog lover to be entranced by this story. It is brimming with warmth, wit, and wisdom. There you go.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It is lovely, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, what a sweet story. Although I have a feeling that one would make me cry.
Uh,
I just have that feeling.
Possibly, possibly.
So, Sun Jung is the author of the novel Bukit Brown, a book of essays, The Letter I Sent You, and the academic book Korean Masculinities and Transcultural Consumption. She has been an academic and writer for media production companies and cultural magazines in Los Angeles, Seoul, and Melbourne, and Singapore, and lives in Darlinghurst, Sydney, with her partner and Gucci, the Mong Mong.
Yeah. And there is a beautiful photo. You'll see those of you who are watching the potty as opposed to just listening. There's a beautiful photo of this little spotty Dalmatian-like dog on the cover there, which is absolutely
Gorgeous.
gorgy. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, book 4 is A Cold Season by Matthew Hooper, and this book is a giveaway in the most recent newsletter. So everybody who's looking at Christmas books, and I have to decide who's going to get this one because there's a few people entered. So A Cold Season by Matthew Hooper is an historical fiction. It's set between the wars. A Cold Season is rich in voice, character, and landscape. And it follows the story of 14-year-old Beth, who's also the narrator. So Beth's brother Sam and her father Owens have gone missing in a freak winter storm. In a small house in the foothills of Mount Kosciuszko, Beth is stuck with her mother and her other brother, little Sasha. They are waiting and longing for Sam and Owens to return. In what threatens to become an emotional and physical pressure cooker, tensions flare. And to make matters worse, Mama is seeing the local badman, Wallace. Matthew Hooper's stunning debut expresses how people deal differently with absence and hope. It's a story of finding agency in a world where people, and particularly the young, are often powerless. As Beth plays with language to reclaim her spirit and family, A Cold Season emerges as unforgettable, a novel that captures rural poverty and human capacity with true soul.
Wow.
Mm.
So, Matthew Hooper is a writer, visual artist, and a teacher of creative writing who has worked as a novel assessor and mentor. He studied a BA in Fine Art at RMIT, then a postgraduate diploma in art history and cinema studies at Melbourne University. He completed an MA in creative writing at RMIT and studied the associate degree in professional writing and editing at RMIT. His manuscript for his MA, My Father's Notebook, was shortlisted for the Overland Novel Prize in 2008, and he lives in Carlton in Melbourne, Australia. So
There
there
you
we
go.
go.
Lots of teachers in the works today.
So many teachers today. It's funny, we get them in cycles, don't we?
We do. We had lots of theatre people, then we've got
Yep.
lots of teachers. So
Yep.
teachers, of course, are all about words, and I wanted to share with you a couple of words from John
Yes.
Koenig's book, The Beautiful Dictionary of Obscure Sorrow.
Lovely.
Now, see if I can pronounce this one. Daguerreologue, which
Ooh.
is Daguerreologue. So this is it's a noun, an imaginary conversation with an old photo of yourself in which you might offer them a word of advice to banish your worries, soak it all in, or to shape up before it's too late. Or maybe just ask them if they thought you had done justice to the life they built for you. And I really like that bit.
That's pretty good.
So that's from daguerreotype, a form of early portrait photography, and dialogue, of course.
Ah,
And that's
yeah.
daguerreologue, yeah, which is good. I like that
Mm.
one. This is another noun, carousel, Kerisl, and it's the sorrow of imagining the wealth of knowledge forever lost to history, knowing we'll never hear the language of the Etruscans, the battle cry of the Sea Peoples, or the burial chants of the Neanderthals, that we'll never read any more than a fragment of the works of Blake, Sappho, Aristotle, or Jesus, or enjoy the untold treasures of the many burned libraries and forgotten oral traditions and unrecorded songs, any of which might have made up the cornerstone of the canon, that we'd all be able to quote by heart and couldn't imagine living without. There you go.
There you go. I often think about the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
That is one story that has always stuck with me ever since I was very little about
Yeah.
the destruction. So
How could they?
I can see that.
Yes. Yeah, so that's carousel, the sorrow of imagining the wealth forever lost. I've got one more for you.
All right.
This is called Mithenness, Mitheness, Mitheness, Mithenness. The unsettling awareness that the rest of the world happily carries on in your absence. How could they? That although things only ever seem to change when you check back in for an update, they're unwilling to wait for you and undergo massive shifts while your back is turned. Your mother getting older, your old friends becoming different people, your hometown losing some of the hallmarks that made it feel like home. So there you go. Mythiness. And, having just talked about AI and books and all the things,
Everything
what
changing.
has changed since you
Yeah.
and I began writing books,
Oh,
Laurie, is
so
just
much.
amazing.
So much. I certainly didn't type any of my early writing up. I've got notebooks and notebooks
No, yes,
in cupboards and
yes.
containers and boxes and crates and all sorts of things.
There you go. Words
Wow.
have magic, don't they?
Yep.
They really do.
Yep.
All right,
I
thanks,
love
John
those.
Koenig. But I
Yes.
think it's time for us to jump into your chat with
Yes,
the
with
lovely
Amanda
Amanda Bridgeman.
Bridgeman. Book lovers, I am absolutely delighted to have with me today Amanda Bridgeman let me go through a couple of these books because you've got so many that I'm excited to talk about. So we've got Military Space Opera, the Aurora series, and the Spud Compton series. We've also got sci-fi thriller, the Salvation series, which I'm anxious to have a chat about, as well as some IP such as Marvel and Warhammer, and numerous short stories and all sorts of bits and pieces. So welcome to the Australian Book Lovers podcast, Amanda.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's absolutely exciting to have you. You are based in WA. I will mention I'm coming to you today from my usual place, Wurundjeri Wurrung country in Victoria. Where are you coming to us from today?
I'm coming to you from the lands of the Whadjuk people.
Fantastic. And we just had a quick chat about the various weather. Victoria is having a bit of a heat wave at the moment, but it's apparently a beautiful day over there in WA today.
It is beautiful late spring day. I think I'm not quite sure what the temps are going to be today, but we had a little bit of rain earlier in the week, so it's nice to have the sun out.
Lovely. Okay, so let me tell you all a little bit about the amazing Amanda, and then we'll chat a little bit about some of her books. So, Amanda is an award-winning, versatile writer. I love that description, with an affinity for dark sci-fi thrillers. Her work has been translated into 4 languages. Born in the country town of Geraldton, Western Australia, she moved to capital city Perth in Western Australia to study film and television creative writing at the Murdoch University, earning her a BA in communication studies. Perth has been her home ever since, aside from a 19-month stint living in London. I actually did 12 months myself, where she dabbled in film and TV extra work. That sounds fascinating. And she has travelled the world extensively. A little bit about her original fiction. Her original work, Amanda is a 2-time Tin Duck Award winner and an Oralis Award and Ditmar Award finalist. Her works include the best-selling military space opera Aurora series, previously published by Momentum Books, Pan Macmillan, Australia. Alien contact drama, The Time of Stripes, and new sci-fi novella trilogy, the Spud Compton series. Her sci-fi thriller Salvation series, consisting of The Subjugate and the Sensation, is published by Angry Robot Books in the UK and is being developed for TV by Anonymous Content and Aquarius Films. There are 2 more books planned in the series. Goodness, what a fantastic bio.
Bit of a mouthful.
Absolutely. And in a way, because we're Australian book lovers and we talk about Australian books and Australian authors, you're really living the Australian writer's dream with all your books being published overseas, different languages, and then you've got TV and film adaptations coming out and also writing some IP. So tell me, how did all of this come about for you?
I think if I go like way back, I always joke that I grew up with 3 older brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And so naturally as kids, the boys didn't want to play dolls with me. So I often kind of sat alone in my room playing dolls. And I think that really actually got my imagination and my creativity flowing. And when I hit my teen years, I really became a big movie head. And I just wanted to be in the movie somehow. So I started writing the movies in my head as novels because I had no idea how to write a screenplay. And so then I went to university, studied film and television. And by the time I finished uni, I was a little bit disillusioned about my chances, especially here in Perth. So I kind of gave up, spent a big chunk of my 20s following my boyfriend's band around and my brother's band around and being a band-aid, living the rock star lifestyle. And then when all my friends started settling down and getting married and having kids, I ran away to London. And then while I was over there, by this time it had been many years, I started doing film and TV extra work. And that really reinvigorated the spark for, this really is what I want to do. I want to get back to it. And so when I came back to Australia, I was watching the Oscars one night and Diablo Cody won Best Original Screenplay for Juno. And I thought, well, I just had one of those moments where I just thought, you know what? If she can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
So I sat down to write my first screenplay. And by this stage, it had been, I think, about 15 years or something since uni. So I was so rusty, I couldn't get past the first page. But I also realised I didn't have enough of the story worked out. So I thought, I might just write this as a novel and figure out the story and then go back and write the screenplay. Now, that novel became Aurora Darwin, my first novel. And I ended up, getting that published and then falling down this rabbit hole of writing the Aurora series. I actually had 5 Aurora books written before I got the publishing deal.
Oh, wow.
And by about the time I was releasing the 6th Aurora book, I thought, you know what, I never got back to writing that screenplay. So I've been juggling novels and screenplays and in the novel sphere, juggling the original stuff with the media tie-in and short stories. And suddenly I'm like juggling a lot of books. And it's like,
And you were working full time through some of this as well?
For the start of it, I was working full time. For the last few years, I have I dropped to like a 9-day fortnight, and then for the last couple of years, I've been doing 4 days a week.
Oh, fantastic.
It's still really, but the older I get, the harder it is. Like when I first started writing the Aurora series, I used to I could write quite late on a weeknight, but now I'm just like, I need to go to bed
Yep.
or I can't go to work the next day. So it's getting tougher.
I actually I've recently reread Aurora Darwin, and I can sense a lot of the brotherly interactions coming through, I think, in that one with the military team and the boys and the girls, and having to have that interaction and connection. How did you go about your research for Aurora, since it was your first one? What did that involve?
In the early days of my writing, I did a bit of research, but perhaps not as much as I should have. I'm a lot more careful about research these days. But the way I kind of got around that was that I wanted to create my own military outfit that wasn't like any that existed on Earth, to sort of allow for you can make it be what you want it to be. So but I also I do watch a lot of documentaries. They're a great way. Someone's already done a lot of research for you and are presenting it to you. You have to be careful about what documentaries you do watch, though, because some can be biased. But you will find ones that are sometimes really, really good and balanced. And so I do watch a lot of documentaries, and I'll watch, like, if I'm writing, I don't know, something about a contagion, then I'll watch, films like Contagion and look at other things that are out there that are relatively reputable, that someone else has already done a lot of research. So you can kind of figure out, you can get the sort of broad overview, and then you can go and jump online and dive a bit deeper in whatever aspects you want to find more about.
Okay. Well, I'll read a little bit about Aurora. I'll just give you the blurb. Let me just grab that, because I've got so many blurbs in front of me, because there's so many wonderful books. Okay, so Aurora Darwin, distress signal on the edge of inhabited space. Two very different people with one common goal: survival. When a distress signal is received from a Black Ops space station on the edge of inhabited space, Captain Saul Harris of the UNF Aurora is called in from leave to respond. But the mission is not what it seems. Information is thin on the ground, and 3 female recruits are assigned to his crew. For Corporal Carrie Wells, one of the Aurora's new recruits, her first mission in space seems like a dream come true. Determined to achieve the success of her father before her, and suddenly thrust into a terrifying mission, she must work with her new captain and the strained Aurora crew to make it home alive. When the Aurora arrives at the station, Harris and Wells soon find themselves caught up in a desperate fight for survival. Station Darwin is not what they expected. The lights are off, but somebody is home. And thank you for popping up the cover there. That is absolutely fantastic.
I have props ready.
Yeah, I've got a few of my own, so I'm throwing those up as well. I'll come back to those. So, because this one was your first book, I do notice there are a couple of themes that do pop up in your first book and with some of your latest books, which is the I guess not necessarily the sexism that comes through in the military, although there is a bit of that in your first book, but also the weaknesses of the female form and having to overcome that in order to survive these absolutely desperate moments. Do you see those themes popping up through your stories? Are you specifically highlighting those? What other themes do you focus on with your work?
I think there's a lot of writers can stick to similar themes, and I think it's just subconsciously there's things that have from the past that will just filter into your work, and it's things you're passionate about. I am very passionate about equality, not just of gender but also of races, or the whole, I'm quite
Or even
literally.
mutants versus humans.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, and I think and I've thought about this, and I think it does stem back to the fact that I did grow up with three older brothers, and back then, in the 80s, there was one set of rules for the guys and another set of rules for the girls. It was just always, and I was also the baby, so I had that as well.
That as well.
But added to that, my parents kind of had this weird arrangement where when they got together, my dad was technically like Church of England and my mum was a Catholic.
Oh.
So they had this agreement, all the boys, any boys they had would be Church of England like dad, the girls would be Catholic.
Wow.
So well, the boys when they were little had to go to Sunday school, but that dropped off pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I had to go to church every Sunday with mum until I was about 15.
Wow.
And so I always go like, I'd have to go out to church on a Sunday night while my brothers would be sitting home watching Countdown. And I'd just be like, how is this fair? So I think a lot of it stems from that really minor stuff, but you see it in every waking life. But it's about acknowledging that, but also like in terms of the military and things like that. Acknowledging that the genders are very different and we each have our assets and to appreciate that. So there's nothing to say that a woman can't kill a man very easily. But it's more likely that a man's gonna be that.
Yeah. And it's interesting with what year would you say you wrote, not published, but wrote Aurora?
Oh, now you've got I started writing Aurora Darwin because I remember a big influence on me was I'd seen the film I Am Legend.
Yep.
And so Will Smith's character in that kind of is what I pictured as Saul Harris.
Ah, nice one.
These days I quite like Idris Elba to play the role.
If you've got any influence there, go there.
Yep, Idris. Yep.
Nice.
So what year did I Am Legend come out? Because I remember it was around then. That kind of was always in my mind when I was writing Aurora Darwin.
Right. Okay. Because it's interesting with the view of the sexes and working together, that even though, say, 10, 20 years ago, the same themes and issues are just as strong today, if not growing again. So it's fascinating that you can, like I said, by rereading the book, I'm like, this is just as relevant to me now as when it came out. So it's that I find is fascinating, particularly with science fiction. I find science fiction really, it reflects our worlds that we're in and warns and possibly hints at what's to come. But there's a lot of repetition.
There is, because on the one hand, you're like, God, humans, are really slow learners. Like we're idiots.
Yeah.
But then I suppose you need to think about, there's new generations coming through the whole time who haven't lived through or experienced what the older generations have.
Yeah.
And so I think that's in part why a lot of why society is cyclical, because people, the younger generation, haven't lived through that, don't quite know the dangers if we go down this path. And the older generations don't understand the younger generations don't understand. And so I think that's why, put enough distance between something horrible. That's why suddenly we're starting to see the Nazis are getting, bolder and coming out again. And it's like, it's because so much time's passed and the generation in between is kind of forgotten. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of sort of the futuristic levels of technology, but repeating the same mentality, I do want to read a little about the subjugate. So this series, and I'm really interested to know what triggered this series, and this is book 2. Here's book 2. Really, and you're working on book 3, is that right?
Yes, I started in all earnest at the start of the year. Got, as you can see, I went through all the old books. I've set up series Bibles. I started writing. I've got the outline. But then some other opportunities presented themselves, so I had to put it aside and get onto these other things. So unfortunately, it's the same with the Aurora series with people, you know, get cranky. When's the next Aurora book coming out? And it's like, yeah, I know, but it's like anything in the entertainment industry, if an opportunity arises, like if you can't say, oh, come back to me in 12 months, I'm just going to write this book, they're going to be like, nah. So you have, unfortunately, sometimes you just got to, and with the Aurora series, because I'm self-publishing it, I can put that aside.
Yeah.
And there's currently no contract as yet for book 3.
So
But
a bit of time as well.
you know, I've got to
Fantastic.
write it.
Well, we might mention the differences between self-publishing and traditional publishing in a little bit, but with this series. So what I found fascinating with this series, and I'll read the blurb of the first book, there is that strong technological warning of what typical sci-fi, what could come, what this could mean. A lot of futuristic sci-fi does tend to fall down those darker lines, which I don't know what that says about us as humans and humanity, that of course, if something amazing comes up, we have to take it to its darkest length. I don't know, but in this case, there's the chipping and technology rewiring parts of the brain and how, particularly in regard to criminals, that I mean, the morality around a lot of the technology that comes up in these books is fascinating to delve right into. And if these ones are being made into, is it movies or TV?
TV, it's in development.
So the issues that's going to bring up, just from a mentality of looking at IT and technology and where Musk is wanting people to go with chips. It's really interesting as to what that could actually mean for the purpose of why we're doing it and what could be done badly if we're not the right kind of people. So let me just read the blurb. So for the subject, in a small religious community rocked by a spree of shocking murders, detectives Salvi Brent and Mitch Grenville find themselves surrounded by suspects. The children of Christ have a tight grip on their people, and the Som complex neurally edit violent criminals, subjugates into placid servants called serenes. In a town where purity and sin, temptation and repression live side by side, everyone has a motive. But as the bodies mount up, the frustrated detectives begin to crack under the pressure. Their demons are coming to light, and who knows where the blurred line between man and monster truly lies. So I found this scarier than I thought it would be. And I think that was just because my mind was taking me into places where this could go here, it could go here, this could get worse, this could get terrifying. What was it like with the research and the rabbit holes you went down for this series in particular? Not only violent criminals, but we're talking serial killers as well.
Yeah, look, I've always been fascinated by the human brain and psychology and why people do what they do. And in particular, I've just always been fascinated in a bad way, not a good way, by serial killers and violent criminals and what makes them do that. And I think, and again, I've self-analyzed and looked back and seen there's been things all throughout my life where I've been a few steps removed from something horrible. And so I think that's fueled the fascination as well. Like when I was younger, growing up in Geraldton, I have distinct memories of the town being terrorized by the Geraldton rapist and memories of mum coming into my room, you know, when I was 9 and making sure the windows were locked. So that memory stayed with me. And then in high school, we had the Greenough murders, which was a little kind of town just outside of Geraldton. Horrific murders that the cops said they'd never released the details of. There was a woman, her teenage son and her 2 young daughters were all slaughtered. And the woman had just been into my parents' paint shop a couple of months before to get the paint to paint the house. And so that kind of stuck with me. It rocked the whole town. And then I moved to Perth for university, and the Claremont serial killer was terrorising everyone. And I used to go to the shop every day because I was at uni. I used to go to the shop and, get a chocolate and a can of Coke, and always went through this same checkout with this same checkout chick. And
Mhm.
then one day she wasn't there, and then the next day she wasn't there, and I thought,
Oh
oh,
no.
she must have left. And then I saw her on the news with her parents appealing for the whereabouts of her sister, Sarah Spears.
Wow.
And so that always stuck with me. And I
Yep.
still to this day, every now and then think of Sarah Spears and hope that
Yeah.
they find her. And then, a few years down the track, you've got the Falconio murders.
Mhm.
And Bradley John Murdoch got found guilty of that. He was a Northampton boy. Northampton is just outside of Geraldton. And my dad was a Northampton boy, and he knew his parents said they were lovely people. And so there's
Wow.
just, I don't know, maybe it says something about where I grew up. I don't know.
WA, man. Woo.
WA, we've got our fair share. But there's always just been something there, a few steps removed, which I've just found fascinating.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I've just always been drawn to it, wanting to kind of understand it.
Mhm.
And with the subject, the idea for that sort of came about. I saw an article one day about a new neural device to help Parkinson's sufferers, which helps control the shakes.
So
And I thought that
positive technology.
positive technology,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yep.
thought it was amazing.
Mm.
And I had memories of a kid every time I used to go to school, we'd pass a guy walking to the shop who had terrible shakes.
Mhm.
And I read this article and thought, oh, imagine, that could have helped him.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking about these neural devices and the ways they can help people. And I thought, what if these neural devices could sort of dampen the parts of the brain that makes serial killers do what they do and violent criminals do what they do. And so I started writing the story, and then in subsequent edits did a bit more further research. And I found this article about a prison experiment research where they studied the brains of reoffending criminals.
Mm.
And they found that in the majority of these reoffending criminals, the parts of their brain that deal with consequences and things like that were underdeveloped,
Yeah.
which kind of basically meant that they're going to keep reoffending because this part of their brain's not working properly.
Yep.
And so I sort of thought, well, yeah, imagine if we had these neural devices that could sort of fix the part of the brain that causes people to be excited by violence, to have uncontrollable violence, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of how this idea came about. And as I said before, I was raised a Catholic, so the kind of religious element came into it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, no, that's what I found quite spooky was that the strangeness of the cult-like behavior,
mm,
and then also creating that almost cult-like behavior in these prisoners who had been gypped and altered. And
mm.
then you go down all these really fascinating IT lines of, well, what does that mean for what if someone abuses that technology and if they take advantage of that technology? And of course, book two with
Yeah,
actually tweaking that technology and
yeah,
and bringing this out in people. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I've always, I was saying with serial killers and stuff, I've always been fascinated by cults because I
Mm,
always just say, how could you fall for that?
mm,
I don't understand it, so I'm fascinated by it. I just
yeah.
watched a 6-part documentary during the week about the Orange People cult.
Okay. Well, no, I'll tell you offline, actually. I'll tell you offline a little
Found
bit about that.
interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've always found that interesting, and I should clarify that I was raised a Catholic, but I haven't practiced since I left high school. So, um, yeah. So I was going somewhere with that. I've just lost my train of thought.
Yes, sorry, cults and technology and
Yes, that's
directing
right.
thoughts.
So yes, with book one, we talk about using the neural implants to cure crime and to deaden the parts that incite violence. But then in book two, I take that idea, flip it on its head, and talk about, well, what if the tech gets into the wrong hands and they use it to exacerbate the violence, to pump up those parts and stimulate those parts of the brain to make people violent or to control other people. So, and it's, look, when you look at the tech and where it's going, there's a lot of amazing things that the tech can do, but also in the wrong hands, there's a lot of really bad things, you know, whether you're looking at things like deep fakes, all of that sort of stuff, to rigging elections and all of that sort of stuff. And
then if we jump back to Aurora, you've got super soldiers and heightening that degree of violence and their abilities to enable them to be more violent. It's
and talking about the cycles too, like you think, oh, how do people not learn? But it's about people taking advantage of things to, like, they look at the loopholes of government, and then and similar with the orange people, Rajneeshi cult, how they took over the local council, they bought the town, they did all those sort of things. And I'm not saying that the cult was all bad; most of them seem pretty happy people, but it's the abuse of power, and when you've got money and you know, kicking people off councils and controlling everything so only way goes, it's not great.
No, and I do find that sci-fi in particular really lets you delve into those what ifs, but what ifs in a pretty dark way.
In a cautionary way, hopefully.
In a cautionary way.
You know.
Yeah. So with your writing journey, how did you, so the Aurora series is self-published, your subject, part of that it was through Angry Robot Books. How has your journey gone with actually the bringing the books into reality, and how long did that journey take you, just for our writing audience who like to find out how people do what they do and how they got there?
So I wrote in secret for a long time because no one else I knew was writing, so I thought maybe I was a bit of a freak, so I kept it to myself, and then eventually showed my sister-in-law, and she was a big reader, and she said, yeah, this is just as good as stuff I've read off, you know, all these bookstores. So that gave me more confidence, and so I kept showing more people and writing, and then I thought, oh, maybe I can try and get published. I tried to I had a crack at trying to get some agents, but back then my patience wasn't my greatest asset. I probably applied for like 4, didn't get any, and like, oh, bugger this.
And then to be fair, the Australian market for genre, not huge.
Not huge, no. And a friend of a friend was setting up her own digital imprint based in the UK. So she reached out, she wanted to publish Aurora Darwin.
Oh, wow.
But unfortunately, there was a clause in the contract which wasn't great, confirmed by the Australian Society of Authors. So I stayed away from that, but around this time I discovered Momentum Books.
Oh, good.
And I approached them and said, look, I've got another deal on the table, but I prefer to be published by you. So they said, oh, I said, I know it's a bit cheeky to jump the queue, but would you mind having a look? And they said, yeah, it is cheeky, but we'll have a look. How long have we got? And I said, oh, by the end of the week.
Oh.
So, and as you know, Aurora Darwin's a big book. It was probably bigger back then before an edit. And they came back and said, look, I haven't finished reading it yet, but it's exactly what we're looking for. So,
oh, wow.
So in terms of finding a publisher, that happened pretty quickly, which isn't always the case. And so I released 5 books with Momentum Books, and then they closed their doors. I thought the world had ended. So but the publishers recommended I get my rights back and self-publish.
Oh, good.
And self-publishing for me was easy because I already had 5 books in the Aurora series out. I already had a readership who were pretty keen. So I could self-publish with the same cover designer, same editor, etc.
So they gave you all of those. That's great. It's not often that you get such a good sort of rights back with everything attached.
Yeah, well, I think I had to buy the rights to the original covers.
Okay.
And and then, well, the one guy did the first 4
Mhm.
up to Aurora Centralis, and then another cover designer did Eden onwards. And so
Mhm.
I just, I pay for the cover designer myself,
Mhm.
editor. I just reach out to them, do it all. I'm the publisher. So,
Lovely. Yep.
so that was a no-brainer. Now,
Mhm.
if someone's starting from scratch with no readership, self-publishing is going to be a bit harder than that because you have to build a readership. So I was
Mhm.
quite lucky. And yeah, so I've kind of took that over to self-publish, got the 2 books with Angry Robot in the Salvation series.
Mhm.
That got picked up, option for TV. And then the publisher at Angry Robot Books,
Mhm.
Mark Gascoigne, right after The Subjugate came out, he left
Yes.
and set up
Remember that.
a tie-in imprint for
Oh.
Asmodee Entertainment called Aconite Books,
Mhm.
and asked if I'd like to try some tie-in work. And I
Oh,
said,
wow.
absolutely, because a lot of my reading as a teenager was actually film tie-in books, film novelization.
Star Trek, Stargate, Star Wars.
Yep, I've got
Yep.
Willow and
Yep.
Ghostbusters and Cliffhanger
Wow.
and Goonies, all that sort of stuff. So
Brilliant. Yeah.
always wanted to do it. And that's how Pandemic came about. I got
Mhm.
the opportunity to write the first novel based on the board game.
And didn't that come out just before COVID hit or just
The
after?
the deal, I was approached in
I
2019.
remember thinking, oh no.
I wrote the book in 2019. I actually wrote under contract these 2 books in about 6 months.
Wow.
And then I submitted Patient Zero in November 2019 to the publisher and got the edits back in January.
Oh, wow.
And I was watching on the news about this virus breaking out in China.
Mhm.
And I thought this is kind of weird to be, editing a book
Great
about the
marketing.
pandemic
Yeah.
while one's breaking out in real time.
Yeah.
It was supposed to come out in March 2020. It got pushed back to September 2020,
Mm.
then March 21,
Oh no.
then it finally came out in September 21. But I was really worried by then because a lot of people have had a gutful of the pandemic, didn't want to read about it.
Yep.
But you know what? It's done quite well. It's the only book I have translated
Oh, wow.
into French, Spanish, and German.
That's brilliant.
It won the Scribe Award
Mhm.
for Best Original Novel at the International Association of Media Time Writers.
Wow, of all timings and
Yeah,
locations and life to be going on at the same time as, wow,
yeah.
that's extraordinary.
So it was, and it's one of the things of being a writer is that you've got no control over life events.
Yeah.
I've had books come out in previous years around a year. I think I had something come out around, I think it was a sensation maybe. Something came out around the 2020 US election. And let me tell you, no one was interested in books at the time.
No.
So I feel like I've had my share of bad luck now. It's time for some, good things to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, things seem to be chuffing along quite nicely at the moment, which is wonderful.
Yes. Well, touch wood. So far, so good. But yeah, so that got me into media time writing, and separately
Which
around the same time.
I do want to point out this one as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm loving the sound of light. This is Dazzler. This is Marvel. It's extremely exciting. And I was a big one. I wasn't a huge comic book person, but books based on, oh, all over them.
All over it. And look, I think that's because I think around the same time, one of the times they came back to me and said, "Oh, the book's been delayed again for pandemic."
Yep.
They said, "Do you want to look at some other properties?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And
Wow.
they gave me a list of properties, and there was a bunch of Marvel stuff on there.
Wow.
I picked 2 and said, "Oh, can I do these?" And one was a short story in the Sound of Light anthology. So that was the first Marvel thing I did, was a short story. And then then Sound of Light came about. So, and that had to go through a few reiterations because I originally pitched for the Marvel Heroines line.
Okay.
But Dazzler fits in the X-Men world. So
Mm.
it had to go into the School of X world. So I had to repitch it to fit in this other world.
Oh, wow.
And the parameters of that. But yeah, so that was crazy. And then the same year,
Warhammer.
Warhammer.
Mm.
The same year, around the same time, actually, I got approached to write Patient Zero.
Wow.
I was approached over Twitter to see if I'd like to write for Warhammer, so I said sure. So
Isn't that extraordinary? It's certainly different pitching these days than it might have been once upon a time with a printed letter.
It is, and it's writing the tie-in stuff's actually benefited my original stuff, because with the tie-in stuff, you've got to, it normally starts with a paragraph pitch, and then if that gets approved, you'll write a synopsis, and then that gets approved, and then you get the contract to write.
Wow.
So you've got to do a little bit of work up front, which is technically, free. But if you get it over the line, you've already got this synopsis that's been pre-approved. And so I've learnt how much easier it is to write a novel when you've already mapped out the whole thing. Whereas with a lot of my original stuff, it was kind of, I had basic, I knew all the main scenes, but I would just start to write and then figure out how I'm going to get from one main scene to the next main scene as I wrote. And that's how my subplots developed.
So you're a bit of a pantser to start off with, but have you trained yourself into plotter?
I'm still a little bit of both, because I think if you tie yourself down too much, it can get a bit rigid, because things do occur to you as you write and go, oh, what did this happen? So I'm a bit of both, but I do like the whole starting from an outline first. And especially with screenwriting, you've got to do that, because you can't really, you've only got so many pages in a screenplay to get that story across. So you have to plan that out. You can't just write that, because you'll be 600-page script.
Yep. And as you know, with self-publishing, you're writing the book on your own time, your own dollar. You can take your time with it, sure, but it's also, you don't have something pushing you in the back of the shoulder saying, get on with it, get on with it.
Yep.
Whereas obviously with IP or with anything contracted, you're tied into specific milestone dates.
Deadlines, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I've been told that one of the things they look for in tie-in writers is they need to know that you can write to a certain standard, but they need to know that you can write fast.
Okay.
So if you're someone who does one novel every 5 years or something, you won't be suited for tie-in. But if you can, pump out a novel in 6 months, then you're probably suited.
So that's very much your typical Aussie author's dream. I think probably any author's dream really is to get into markets that are just huge and are going to guarantee you some sales and being asked to write for your favorite media. It's that's certainly something that I would love to do. And I was the Star Trek reader. I was the Star Wars reader way back in the day, back in the Legacy series day. So yeah, that to me, hearing your story is absolutely marvelous for someone like me who aspires to get to there. So that's really exciting. But with your writing journey, and I had a question that was right at the top of my brain, and it's disappeared. Oh, novellas and so shorter material to longer material. Do you change your style depending on the media tie-in, the your own books, the short stories?
I've become very good at understanding whatever story idea I have, what's the best length for it.
Oh, wow.
Because basically, the depth of your idea will dictate the length of it. So, if you look at a short story, it's a snapshot in time. It's got to be happening quickly. There's only room for the A plot and something over like a very kind of short period of time. So it's suited for a short story. With a novel, you've got a lot more landscape there to write, and you need the subplots to fill that length. So with something like The Subjugate and all the tech, the religion, the control, the gender issues, all of that, it's right for a novel because there's so much exploration you can do there. Whereas, so for instance, I've written a short story in the Snafu anthology, and that's about an AI that's taken over a train, and there's a military outfit trying to stop it. So it's
Oh, wow.
you've got a ticking time clock, and
Mhm.
it's you've only got so many minutes to stop this train, so it's suited to a short story. Yeah, so it's just the depth of the idea and the concept will dictate the length.
And do you think that your writing has changed from your early work to your work now? Do you find yourself writing knowing that there's a possibility of TV or films, or are you purely still only writing to write?
I still write all my novels and my stories. I'm one of those people that I see the movie in my head as I write.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of always feel like I'm writing this prose style, but I'm writing it as if we're seeing it on a screen. So and it seems to work. I've had a lot of people tell me over the years that my stuff is very adaptable. It's not super literary. So that because something super literary and with dense prose is going to be harder to kind of adapt to a screen, whereas mine's a little bit more told a little bit more simply, I think. It's just my style. So
A little bit more
yeah, so
blockbustery.
I've always written wanting to see whatever I write on the screen. So yeah, I think
Well,
that's
you captured tension beautifully, and I find myself getting drawn. I mean, I'm a reader that gets drawn in and starts creating from that as I'm reading. But with the sci-fi, with the military actions, the action moments, the fighting moments from Marvel with your X-Men, they're great scenes that you've got a way of just building that tension that really hooks a reader, which is absolutely fantastic. And that's why I've hooked into so many of your different novels, and I absolutely love that. This is really your brand now. You've been able to brand yourself into sci-fi and military and superheroes or super soldiers, I guess you could almost say. Do, with your branding, with being online, how do you find, do you ever get that moment in your head where you think, you know what, I'd like to write something completely different? Or is that just you love the sci-fi, you love getting involved in the fantasy elements?
I love that stuff. And again, it probably is because I grew up with three brothers, but like I grew up watching action films and sci-fi, and it's just I love that stuff. At the same time, I'm a chick. I do love rom-coms and stuff like that as well. So after I'd written The Subjugate, and I had been listening to a lot of true crime documentaries, and I realized I'd listened to too many of them, that my demeanor had changed. I was starting to get a little bit blue and hyper aware of security. And the case that kind of like broke me was the Golden Gate serial killer. The podcast I listened to went over 7 episodes, I think. And normally they did a case in 2 episodes. And this was so long, and I'm listening to it, and I thought, oh, I've got to catch this guy. This case went over like 40 odd years, and it ended on episode 7. They still hadn't caught him. And I was just like devastated that they hadn't caught this guy, and that all these people had, it was like over 40 women had been attacked. And back then the police stations didn't talk to each other and share information, and it was just mess up after mess up. But so I kind of, when you see all these cases that never get solved, and you hear interviews with the cops who were just devastated that they wanted to get justice for the families and never could. And it was just so depressing. And then I kind of decided after that I needed like rainbows and unicorns for a while to kind of bring myself back. And I kind of banned myself from listening to true crime podcasts for a while. But then strangely enough, literally like 2 months later on the news, they'd caught the Golden Gate serial killer. And I was yes! I actually shouted out loud. I just went, yes! I felt like, the world's not such a bad place after all, they got him. So, but yeah, so after that I had to go to rainbows and unicorns and nice things. And that ended up just one Saturday morning, I woke up and I had this idea in my head for this kind of romantic comedy film. So I started writing a romantic comedy feature. So
Oh, wow.
I've got a couple of the lighter stuff in screen versions, but I haven't branched there yet in my book career.
Writing. Yep. Wow. Well, what? Oh, actually, I do want to ask you. Audiobooks. Are yours in audiobook yet?
There's 3 in audiobooks. So the Salvation series,
Oh, good.
Subjugate, The Sensation, and Patient Zero is also in audio.
Oh, wonderful. Do you find that the different types of media, how much involvement do you get in
With
the adaptions?
with the traditionally published stuff, very little.
Okay.
With pandemic, I was just told, hey, audiobook's coming out. It's all done.
Wow.
With the Subjugate, I did have choice of narrator. I was sent 2 choices and chose one.
Okay.
So I did have that much influence, and then the same narrator came back for the second book. But you don't really have much choice. And I'm often asked, oh, is the Aurora series going to be available in audio? And because I'm self-publishing that, I would have to do it myself.
Yeah.
And they're very expensive to produce.
Yeah.
As soon as I come into some money, I would love to do that.
Wonderful.
But the other thing about the Aurora series is it's a bit tricky because you've got a hell of a lot of characters.
Yeah.
It's quite the epic. And you've got a lot of different accents. So for me, it would probably work best if it was like an audio
like a
drama.
radio play. Yeah. Yep.
Where you can have the different actors, you know. Obviously I need an African American male to be Harris, but then you've got Kiwi accents, Russian accents, you know, French accents. Like it's all there. So that's a trickier one to do than perhaps some of my other books. Like The Time of the Stripes would be something I could do, and that's currently a standalone. So that's something
cool.
But again, I don't know, I think it's like $4,000 to $6,000 or something
I know it's definitely you have to budget pretty well when you're self-publishing.
Yes,
for sure.
So, not there yet, but if I come into some money, if I win lotto, I'll definitely love to do that.
Waiting for that millionaire family member that no one knew about to pass away, that sort of thing. Okay, so advice for writers starting out. What would you really highlight for a new writer starting out?
The best thing for me was going to as many writing events as possible, and whether they be like go to book launches, definitely go to all the conventions. So I was in Perth, so it's kind of limited in terms of what, but I would go to, you know, the Perth Writing Festival, because occasionally, I mean, you could be guaranteed there'd be thriller writers there. Occasionally they'd have a sci-fi and fantasy person there. But being sci-fi, obviously there's SwanCon here in Perth. But what I did, because I was working full time, is I would regularly travel interstate to all the interstate conventions. So Conflux in Canberra, Continuum in
Supernova.
Melbourne.
Yep.
The Supernovas I only went to when I was actually an author.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, I did go to the ones in Perth and AusComicCon as a normal punter. But the other one that was really good was GenreCon. I went to the first few GenreCons that were on, and they were great because you had all the genres there together, and you could learn so much from the other genres. Like, there's a lot of people who snob off, you know, romance writers, and it's like
toughest job ever.
It's a tough job, but also they're the smartest business people you will come across.
Yep.
You can learn so much about the business from them, and marketing and all that sort of stuff. So it's like, don't ever snob off any other genre, because there's a lot you can learn from them. So yeah, just go along to as many, because it's listening to people, professionals talk who are a few steps in front of you about just, even the pitfalls that you can try to avoid, but you'll learn so much about the business of writing, so much about the craft of writing, and just, the really generous ones will tell you where they messed up and how to not do the same thing.
Every journey is different, but they all have information that can help everyone, I think, is because everyone's journey is different. It's amazing that we all get there in the end
I know.
through so many different pathways.
Well, and that's the other thing I would say actually is like eyes on your own plate to a certain degree, because you see a lot of other authors who are doing really well, but you have to understand that everyone comes from a different place, different experiences, has different levels of skill, knows different people in the industry, has the means to like travel interstate and do stuff like that. So the comparisonitis thing is never helpful, because everyone's different. So it's you're comparing yourself to something that's very different from yourself. They might have a lot of success, but when you really dig down and you look at some of the more, well, not famous authors, but more successful authors than like there's some people out there who've had amazing opportunities, but then they've never had anything developed for TV or stuff like that. So I'll sit there and go, well, actually, I'm quite lucky, because that person, they might sell more than me, but they don't have a TV adaptation, do they? So, you've got to like, it all evens out in the wash.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. I really love that advice. So where can our authors find you online, or do you have any events or panels coming up?
I actually don't have any events or panels coming up, but I'm online, amandabridgeman.com.au. I'm on all the social medias, too many social medias, thinking of scaling back, but I'm on Blue Sky.
Yay.
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Threads, I'm still on X. They do have good cute animal videos on there, and I like reading the tarot ones too. So
nice.
so yeah, I'm still on X for the moment, but it is getting harder to justify staying there, especially with the whole AI taking it to, it's like, oh.
Which we could delve into another full podcast, I think, just on AI alone. So, and hopefully we'll be able to get you back at some point to continue our chat. I'd love to see where you go from here. What are you working on now? What's next
I've got 2 things in the pipeline for next year, but neither have been announced. So I can't
say anything.
They're both supposed to be out by July next year, so we'll see.
Lovely. And we know there's the book 3 of the Salvation series.
I'm desperately trying to get back to book 3. But again, I had an opportunity arise. So the last few months I've been mainly on screenwriting. There's potentially another screenwriting gig in the midst, which I want to do, but I also want to get back to Salvation. So I'm trying very hard, because I need to do the next Salvation book so I can then go and do the next Aurora book. I'm trying really hard to finish the series that I've currently got. And I've kind of banned myself from writing anything new, because I have to finish these series. But
that's tough. That's when you get the hints for something new, isn't it?
I know I've got so many books lined up that I want to write, but I'm like, I can't. And I might just have to be careful with how much, because the thing with screenwriting is there's no guarantee anything will ever get made. Whereas if I write a novel, if I don't find a publisher it suits, I can just self-publish. It's never wasted. I can still, put that out there. But screenwriting's always been such a huge dream of mine that it's hard to say no when there's a viable opportunity there. So.
Yep. Is that one of those times where you just say yes to everything? Is it those sorts of things that come up?
I used to say yes to everything, because I was just like, oh, they want to work with me, great. But I've learned along the way to, and this is probably going to sound a bit woo-woo, but to listen to my body. Because if someone's offering me something and like, yeah, that sounds all right, but if I kind of feel like I'm sagging a little bit, I know it's not for me.
Yep.
And I also know that how long working on anything takes and how little time I've got. I developed a TV show with a producer a few years back, and we spent a solid like 18 months on that.
Wow.
But then I look back and think, when I've got Aurora readers getting cranky at me, it's like, well, I wasn't just sitting around, I was actually working, but it's just something that hasn't come to fruition yet.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'm really mindful now about, I've only got so much time, so I've got to be very clear about what I'm working on. And so that's why I'm trying very desperately to get back to book 3 of the Salvation series before something else crops up that I simply can't say no to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's difficult.
Well, once again, I'd like to thank Amanda for joining the Australian Book Lovers podcast and for talking to me today. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day and that you actually get a little bit of time for yourself in amongst all the amazing works that you're producing at the moment. Amanda Bridgeman, thank you so much for coming on the Australian Book Lovers podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's awesome to have a podcast dedicated to Australian writers. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Well, Amanda Bridgeman, thank you so much. And thank you, Laurie, for such a absolutely bloody insightful and fabulous. I can't even think of the words. I've lost my
It was
words today.
such a good chat.
It was great.
Yeah, it was
a
such a
great
good chat.
chat.
I mean, I definitely love to delve into my sci-fi nitty-gritties and get into that the technology spookiness and the creepiness and the destruction and terror.
I loved her quote. My favorite one was humans are slow learners. I thought, you absolutely captured it.
Yeah.
And her research, she uses documentaries, and versatile absolutely describes her.
Absolutely. And what I love about chatting with someone like Amanda is for those budding writers out there who are just starting out and or who have thought about writing a book. I think Amanda's one of those careers that that's where you want to get to. There's your pinnacle. There's an ideal, isn't it? Amazing, her story, where I know, you have chats with writers, and of course all of us would love to get, a movie made or a TV show made of a book, but her works are just spectacular and very visual, which is a part of the reason why I love them so much. But I'm really looking forward to seeing those come to fruition. And the fact that she's even doing a bit of the screenwriting herself, which is
which is fantastic.
Oh, absolutely amazing. So and even IP, because we don't really talk about that a lot, but all your old classics like I mean, in her case, Marvel and Warhammer, but also, for me, it was Stargate, it was Star Trek, it was Star Wars. I've got thousands of media tie-ins, because I think there is just something about, particularly in the last 20 years or so, 20, 30 years, you want more material. And when a show gets cancelled or it goes off the air for a while, unlike the suddenly reappearance of a lot of Star Wars media now and Star Trek as well.
Yeah.
But when the original series were cancelled, or you only had the original 3 Star Wars movies, I was voracious. I wanted to read everything. I wanted their next stories and what happens to Princess Leia and what happens to Han Solo. And, it's I think there is a lot to be said for particularly the younger groups coming through. If you already know the characters and they're in your head, you just want to read more. So I think that's a fantastic work she's doing. And I did finish on the weekend. I did finish that lovely one that I was showing you, Dazzler. Oh, it was marvelous. Absolutely brilliant.
Beautiful cover.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely fantastic. And I see a lot of the themes popping up because I've read multiple works of Amanda's. I see a lot of those themes coming up. So it was a real joy to read, and a very bright, hopeful one too. So that's fun as well. Bright. Yeah. She's Dazzler. She has, yeah.
Oh, this is good. So again, thank you, Amanda Bridgeman.
Yes.
And you can find just a small section of Amanda's works are on the sci-fi page, and of course all of the links to her social medias and her website and everything. So jump on and support Amanda's books. Buy a book, borrow it from the library, as you know.
Tell friends.
Exactly. All right.
Absolutely.
We need a quote, Laurie.
Oh, yes. Now, I was pulling through all my sci-fi quotes today because I thought I'd stay on theme.
Yes.
So I've got one from Isaac Asimov. Science
Love
fiction
that.
writers foresee the inevitable, and although problems and catastrophes may be inevitable, solutions are not.
Ah,
So I like
nice.
that
Yes.
one.
I do like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I do like Asimov's stuff. And
Mm.
yeah, it's just amazing. And that's
Mm.
one of the series, we talked about getting the series. I had all of the iRobot and all, the Nightfall stories and all of that. And I started to gather those back up again. And the little and usually the novels were quite small and the writing was like about a size
It's
7 or
tiny.
6.
Yeah, I'm sure that's why I've got glasses now. I totally blame all the tiny fonts that I read when I was little.
Yeah, I may not be able to read them, but I'll have them in my library. But anyway, there you go. So my quote is from Kate Elliott, who is a fabulous American fantasy writer, who's is of course one of the aliases of Alice A. Rasmussen, and she says, "Write all characters as human beings in all their glorious complexity and contradiction."
Mhm.
And I thought that kind of fitted with what Amanda was saying about,
Definitely.
yeah, just everything, you know, imperfect, the
Yeah.
imperfect people, which is lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the flaws, the
Yeah.
character flaws, which
Yeah.
make people interesting to read about
Yes. Yeah.
because you wait for them to trip over their own feet in some
Yes.
cases with
And
stories. I think that's what
I can
makes them
see
more
this coming. I
enjoyable.
know what they're
Yeah.
going to do. Oh,
Yep.
they did it.
And then you hope they learn something
That's
by the
it.
end of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. That character arc. Yeah, it's good.
That's a great quote.
It is
Yeah.
a good quote.
Right
Yeah, I
on.
do love that. And I love Kate's
Mm.
writing, which is beautiful. Okay, that's it. It's another fabulous episode we're putting to
Yes.
bed. And if you want to follow us on social media, we're now on Blue Sky.
We
A little bit.
are.
We're
That's
on Blue
my
Sky.
fault. I've got you on Blue Sky now.
I might have to give somebody else away. I'm thinking we might have to give away what was the other bluebird. But anyway, we'll see how we go. We're on Twitter at Australian Books, Instagram and Threads, Australian Book Lovers. Blue Sky, we're Australian Books because of the limitation. We're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube. You can listen on all good podcasting platforms. You can watch us on YouTube and Spotify. And if you'd love to support us, we would love you to support us. Help us get those books out to people and post them out. Help us pay for the platform that we bring you, celebrating and supporting Aussie authors.
And don't forget, as we're coming into the silly season and the good old sales season as well, we have hundreds of amazing books on the website. If you're looking for recommendations for that person that you're not too sure what to get for, but you know what, they like romance or they like fantasy, there's options galore on the website. So go there, get a book by an Aussie author.
Indeed. Or if you want to give them not a book or wrap it in, you can get them some merchandise. Because we're both lifting our t-shirts to show people.
We're so short.
And we have, you can get it on all our beautiful mascots on books and pens and t-shirts and bags and all sorts of things. And scarves and doonas. If you really love us that much, you can do that.
And the tote bag is fantastic. It's a
tote bag is
perfect
good.
size for
It
putting
is.
books in. It's
Yes.
brilliant.
Yes, it is great. You can get all sorts of things on it. Thanks, Laurie, for another great chat.
Yes.
And we just need our sign off.
We do. And let's see if we can actually get through it. So we need to remember to read more Aussie books.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Let's meet again when magic happens.